a career real estate agent because I didn't think to compress time. I bought the properties, I held on to them, and they appreciated over time, and that's great. But I started thinking, hey, it doesn't always have to be that way. I've got dreams, I've got dreams, I've got dreams to find a way out. I've got dreams, I've got dreams, I've got dreams to find a way out.
Welcome to episode 21 of the Real Estate Junkie podcast. Today, we're thrilled to have Ginger Faith, CEO of Golden Canyon Properties, with over 30 years in real estate, 52 house flips, some even featured on HGTV, and a status as an Airbnb superhost. Ginger is also the founder of the Women's Wealth Network. In this episode, we're diving into how to compress time and retire in 2 to 5 years. Whether you're new to investing or a seasoned pro, you won't want to miss this episode. So let's jump right in. Ginger, welcome to my show. I'm so happy that you were able to do this today.
Yes, thank you, Keith. Good to be here with you.
So just to kick things off so the audience kind of gets to know a little bit about yourself, maybe you can start with how you originally got into real estate in the first place. Everyone has that backstory. Maybe it was a book you read, but what was that jump start for you?
Yeah, so I'm an avid book reader. I've been a book reader since I was 8 years old, and I joke to say I've been doing this 30 years. I started when I was 8 years old in real estate. The first book I read was by Robert Allen in the 90s, and Unlimited Power by Tony Robbins. Quite honestly, between those two books, there was kind of a 1-2 punch. So Tony Robbins helped me think that I could do anything.
Yeah.
And I started a business where I was very successful very quickly. And then I didn't know what to do with the money. So I kept reading about ideas because I just couldn't buy another pair of shoes and feel good about it because the money just kept coming in with the business. So I decided to do something more intelligent and started reading Robert Allen's book, which was Nothing Down. Very, very famous book back in the day. And he said, you can buy real estate, put nothing down. And I remember one of his main concepts was if you buy one house a year, rent it out, start paying off the mortgages, in 10 years, that's your retirement plan. And I thought that was really a great idea. So I decided to buy a 6-family house right away so I could jumpstart it. And I would compress six years into 1 year. And so that's how I started it back in 1994. I bought an ugly old Victorian that was it was just a mess, but it was cool. Had a widow's peak. It had mahogany libraries in it, but it was split up into 6 units. And all I did to begin with was just paint it pink, purple, and cream, like a Victorian painted lady, when nobody in the neighborhood was that color. It was kind of crazy, but I was young and silly. I just thought, I like these colors. Somebody else will like these colors. And what happened was people started lining up with rental applications saying, I want to rent. It was kind of crazy. And people were actually volunteering to fix up their own apartments. So, here's a bucket of paint, here's some spackle, here's a paintbrush, go for it. And people
That's great.
It was crazy. It's like, you think about what it is today and just contractors and liability. And back then it was kind of like the wild, wild west, like, here, go for it. And then just give me money. And within, under a year, it was cash flowing positively. I was living for free in the main penthouse. And I thought, wow, this is great. How do I sign up for more of this? And so I guess I became a real estate junkie back then.
Nice. So where was that?
That was outside Boston.
Outside of Boston.
Yeah, I was living in the Boston area.
So you like basically were house hacking. That's like a big buzzword these days, right? Before people were really even talking about it.
Yeah, there were a lot of things I did, which I think back now and I just say, gosh, I was so ahead of my time, but I didn't know it.
Yeah.
I could have had my own HGTV show back then. I was flipping houses in the 90s. I had the tool time belt and the whole thing, but house hacking and all that, those things that became buzzword um, once people became more connected
Yes.
through the internet. Things that I did naturally became kind of sexy, which I didn't think that they were sexy. I thought it was just called work, right?
Yeah. So that first property that kind of kick-started your journey, you mentioned that you read a book that, hey, if you buy a house every year, and you thought, you know what, let me try to jumpstart this and buy a 6 unit from, square one. And then you moved forward to flip over 52 houses, and even some of them have been featured on HGTV. So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, if you're just always moving and you're always trying to learn and grow and figure things out, things happen. I didn't intend to have my properties on HGTV. It just happened that way. But my first flip was also in 1996, which is a couple of years later, and that was in Brockton, Massachusetts. And then I actually sold everything, moved to California, and became a mortgage broker. So I've been a mortgage broker since 2001, processed and originated over 500 loans during that time. But when the crash happened, everything changed. And
Yeah.
so I was no longer originating mortgages because there was no money. And so I had to figure out what to do. But at the same time, my clients were coming to me. Now they were going through divorces, they were having job losses, the house values were cut in half. So I started to facilitate short sales at that time. And of course, the REO world was ripe at that time. It was just a crazy time. So I started helping people to short sell, and I also started buying property to renovate and to flip, because that was really the window. So if my career in real estate is characterized by anything, it's flexibility. I'm small enough to be flexible, but it's like, so when flipping was the way to go, that's where I went. When mortgages were going crazy, I went there, and that was really wonderful to learn how to like all the inner workings of banking and how the banking
Mm-hmm.
system works and underwriting and all that. That was incredibly valuable, which served me well later on when I was actually short selling property. I knew how to deal with the banks anyway, already. And that's when I compressed from 2009 to 2014. I flipped 52 homes. I went up to about 57. I slowed down after that. I did some day trading, took some time off. But that's basically it's about compression. So I would focus on buying apartment houses, then I focused on mortgages, and then focused on short sale flipping and REOs and all of that.
Nice. And, I talk to a lot of flippers, and they get to a point where the money's great, but it's still something that you're always chasing. Plus you're paying a ton of taxes, but if you're making more money, of course you're going to be paying more taxes. But it's like a constant grind to, oh, we got to get the next house. Oh, we got to get the next house,
Mm-hmm.
versus actually holding on to some of these properties. So
Right.
were you doing that as well to build the
Not
long-term wealth?
Not enough.
Not enough. Yeah.
I had 10, and that's
Okay.
not enough, but that's okay. I mean, I didn't need that much, but yeah. So I just here and there, I would pick off something that made sense. But at the time, the numbers, I did not have a crystal ball and know what was going to. Some people did,
Yeah.
some people knew Silicon Valley was going to blow up.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah.
At that time, the rents and the mortgages were barely squeaking by,
Yeah.
and everything just exploded. So obviously, hindsight's 2020. So, but I'm okay. I'm not gonna.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, I've told this story before, but the first flip I ever did was in like literally 2000, end of 2006 into 2007, the worst possible time to buy a fixer upper.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I lost a ton of money on it, and
Yep.
basically
Yep.
was like, okay, I'm never going to do real estate. Real estate's not for me. It just totally turned me off to the whole thing. But
Yep.
now I look at that house that I like lost so much money on. If I would have just figured out a way to hold on to that for the
Yep.
long term, that house is worth triple what it was in like 2007. It's crazy.
Right.
And that's the power of real estate that a lot of people just don't realize, that it doesn't take that long for the value to go up. And as long as you're in a situation where, you know, you have renters that are paying the mortgage or more, you're going to be ahead. You just have to hang on. You're going to probably have to have some type of active income while you're waiting for time to be on your side. Like, it's not usually going to be an overnight success story where all of a sudden you own 10 rentals and you're financially free. But let's talk about the main topic that I really want to dive into, because you have a lot of insight on that. And that's how to compress time to retire in 2 to 5 years with real estate investing, because there are so many people out here that I'm sure are listening right now. Maybe they're like 50 years old and they have nothing. Maybe they just own the house they live in, or maybe they don't even own the house they live in and they don't have a retirement. So they're starting off later in life. How can we speed up the time to retire earlier versus later, right? And be financially free. So that's really what I want to hear from you, what your experience is and where your head is on that.
Yeah. So Keith, this has started to come to my awareness when I started talking with, I'm always talking about real estate because it's just an interesting topic, right?
You're a real estate junkie, just like
I'm
me.
a real estate junkie. Yeah, exactly. And I'm a career real estate person, and I've had, highs and lows. I'm also a real estate entrepreneur, right? If you really look at the reality of the last 30 years. So I'm a business person. I've always had a business and an investor, both. Because I'm a big believer in having both. But I started having, the more I talk to women specifically, but it doesn't matter because it's gender neutral, truly. But I started speaking with women about this idea of retiring with real estate, and they would just like lean in. It's like, how do I do this? How do I do this? They don't know anything about it because they were taught, get a W-2 job. And our whole world has changed so drastically since our parents' generation so quickly. So as people started leaning in, and then I started finding I have a couple of girlfriends who compress time in specific ways, and one of them I know specifically because we're so close, and she knew nothing about real estate, but she's very ambitious, she's very hardworking, very smart, and she's coming to me for advice. But what I saw her do in the window of about 3.5 years is make multiple 7 figures and retire. Now, the truth is, I do not believe in retirement because there are better things to do. What I do believe 100% is in lifestyle design. I love to work. I don't feel happy unless I'm getting my, chewing into something. Problem solving.
I agree. Yes.
Right?
I think that what you're hitting on is just the time freedom, right? To do
100%.
things when you want to do them. That doesn't mean you're not going to
Exactly.
work just as many hours. It's just you're able to do it when you want to versus
Yes.
at a certain schedule on your
Yes.
life. And I think schedules are like chains, right?
Yes. Yes, exactly. I've been blessed my whole life. I've never been on a set schedule. Now, there's this old entrepreneur joke that says, I'm self-employed. I pick which 23 out of every 24 hours I want to work.
Yes. Yes. So true.
But the truth is, I never wake up to an alarm. I have a very flexible life. I ease into the days slowly, but then I pick up speed, and I end up always having a lot of productive, wonderful days. But going back to my girlfriend, in 3.5 years, and she was coming to me for advice because she didn't know what she was doing, but she figured it out. And basically, she flipped a 56-unit apartment complex within 3 years.
Now, this was her first real estate deal ever?
She had done one flip and made 20 grand in Silicon Valley, which is nothing. Okay.
Yeah.
That's like
Yeah,
very
in Silicon
dangerous.
Valley, that flip didn't go so well.
And worked really, really, really hard.
Yeah.
And then she had done 2 sales as an agent. That's it, 2 sales. Very, very good sales, big sales. But she didn't want to be an agent because it was too much work. She just wanted to, really, really focus, and then blow it up. And then I have another girlfriend who owns 8 shopping centers. She's a really great friend of mine, and she did this in 5 years, and she is like making bank, making bank. So when, so I'm hanging out with these people who I'm a career real estate agent because I didn't think to compress time. I bought the properties, I held on to them, and they appreciated over time, and that's great. But I started thinking, hey, it doesn't always have to be that way, because the women who are coming to me, they're like you said, they don't have any money. They haven't, they've raised kids. Sometimes they've been in a marriage that's now dissolved. Now they're stressed out. Like, what happened? How did the time go by so quickly?
Yeah.
And again, like you said, some people are young and ambitious and saying, do I want to buy into the whole, Tim Ferriss kind of was one of the trailblazers back in 2004, talking about, do we want to be always chained to the desk? No, the times have changed. And so I believe that compressing time with real estate is not only possible, but it's a thought process that we can start entertaining this idea and how to do it. And so the way I've extrapolated by many hours thinking about this and talking with my friends, back in the day when Donald Trump used to be cool, he would always say, like, now everybody's split either way, right?
Yeah,
So, and that's not my issue, but he used to say, if you got to think big. Yeah. And I was, what does that mean? If you got to think big, what does that mean? And now I'm understanding that because I'm seeing my friends, buying a 150,000 square foot shopping mall. She was in IT. She didn't know how to do this. Yeah. And she did, because she got the right education at the right time and was ambitious. Now she's got a partner. They both have partners, by the way, so they're not all by themselves. So I do recommend getting a good partner who has opposite skills from you.
Yeah, I think that's very important. Even to be just a devil's advocate, sometimes you need that.
Right. So I belong to a wonderful group. I recommend it to everybody. �ㄗ𝐬𝐬𝐶 Commercial Academy, where I hang around with people who take down $1 billion worth of commercial real estate per quarter. And the stuff they're doing is amazing. But I also see that some of these people started with nothing. And because they're thinking bigger, they're expanding their vision of what's possible, they're growing out of their comfort zones. And so I started talking about it and realizing that people really find it interesting to start thinking about it. So the couple ways where I think that people need to think about compressing time is 1, speed, and 2 is volume. And largeness. So, for example, I made a lot of money during the time between 2009 and 2014 because I revved up my speed and volume because there was so much going on right then. And then my friends are buying larger product, larger commercial space. Now, if you go in and just buy a commercial building without knowing what you're doing, you're going to have your head handed to you, right? Because there's so many sharks out there. So I'm not recommending it for everybody to just go ahead and do that. But I am recommending that everybody, if they're serious about retiring and compressing time, that you start educating yourself quickly. This is a speed game. Money loves movement, right? The people that I'm working with and I'm doing, I just got back from 7 days hanging out with these very, very successful commercial real estate investors, and money likes movement. They're moving, they're figuring it out, they're doing things, they're talking together, they're learning, growing, and doing. And there's an acceleration of energy, and money loves an acceleration of energy. And if you do this, if you decide you're comfortable and you have like kind of a sing-song approach to life, you're going to get sing-song results. But with the energy of the right people and the right education, the right knowledge, and the consistency of focus, I know for sure that you can compress time. You just have to think differently than you did before.
You have to think bigger, like you said. Mm-hmm. In the famous words of Donald Trump. So when you're saying commercial real estate deals, just like thinking bigger, like instead of going after, one house every year, you just go after something huge, right? And when you're talking about commercial, what type of commercial property are you talking about? Like strip malls, shopping centers, not office space, obviously.
Well, that's not obvious. That's not obvious. Right now, okay, what did Warren Buffett say? He
When
said,
others are fearful or something like that, that's when you should.
then I'm greedy.
Yes.
And then when others are greedy, I'm fearful.
Yes.
Okay, so not office. So it's contextual, right? So not office all the time, anywhere, anyhow. Okay. Again, knowledge, knowing people who know what they're doing, connecting with people who know what they're doing. So the people who make the big money are the people who are counterculture, right? Because they're buying when everybody's selling.
Yeah. Yeah, that is
It
true.
happened in 2009. That's why I was
It
flipping
did.
property. See, I wasn't flipping property in 2005-06. I was like, these are crazy prices. I'm not gonna. There's no money here.
Yeah.
And I saw people doing it, but then again, they got their ass handed to them. So, really, so I'm not going to say buy office or not buy office. Be very, very, very careful, and maybe not now. Maybe keep an eye on office. Maybe watch the trend, do the demographics. Because the word on the street, not the street, the word on the inside of this billionaires club is that office will come back, but there may be a long hold time. So can you hold it with either
what creative things can you do with that office space until it does come back around? That's one I've seen some pretty creative things. Like
some people are making them into residential.
Yeah, I'm seeing that. I'm seeing where they're turning them into just like gyms and different types of things that that you wouldn't have even thought of before. I mean, I know somebody that bought this old warehouse and turned it into basically a basketball court that they charge like club teams to play in, and it's packed all the time. It's turned
That's
into
funny. We were just talking about that last week, that there was a basketball type of club like that gave an LOI to one of our people. And he's seriously thinking, he's looking at the numbers saying, hey, this could really work.
Yeah, I mean, actually there's something like I've been thinking about that myself, because we're pretty big into basketball here, and my son's like plays basketball, and I look at what we go through every weekend when we're playing at these tournaments, and like there's just not enough gyms. Sometimes practices get moved because we don't have the space for it and stuff like that. So anyway, we got off a little bit on that, but what would you recommend someone that just is starting from scratch? What's the first thing you would tell them to do?
I would first tell them to assess your skills and your talents. Look very, very realistically at who you are as a person. So, if you haven't done the Strong's aptitude test and Enneagram test or whatever, that Myers-Briggs, know who you are and what your talents are, because you don't want to waste a lot of time doing something. People sometimes they'll watch a show on TV, a house flipper show. They have no business flipping houses because they don't know what they're doing and they don't even like it.
Yeah.
Okay. But maybe they're great with people. Maybe they're great, they're wonderful with people and they have a natural genius for people. Well, then your strategy is going to be wildly different than someone whose love is for building and ripping things apart. That's a whole different thing. Maybe you're a systems person. You have a natural genius for like organizing teams and systems, totally different skills. So I would say, number one, really doing, I'm starting a masterclass on that actually, about, knowing who you are. And then the second thing to do is to do a personal financial statement and look very candidly at your numbers. I was working with a client recently, and she wants to buy a house in the Silicon Valley, and that's very challenging. And she said to me, I'm just going to think positive. And I said, that's not going to get you anywhere. It's just not about and I'm a positive thinker. Okay. But in the Silicon Valley, if you want to buy a house, you need to be a strategic thinker, not a positive thinker.
Yes.
Right. So I created on my YouTube channel how to win the bidding war. And I interviewed some of the number one real estate agents in the country. Like, how do you deal with this? This is crazy. I just helped a client get into a house. We worked on it for a year, and bids. We got outbid on 6 times, but then we used some of those tactics, and we finally got into a house. But normally 20.
Are you seeing, this is kind of going off. Sorry. Are you seeing like bidding wars right now in Silicon
Hell yeah.
Valley? Yeah.
Yeah. So I put in a bid the other day. The agent said, "Oh, I have 3 people who are supposed to be bidding," and I checked with him the next day. He said we had 16 offers.
Is that because the interest rates are going down? You're
I
seeing,
believe that is exactly the reason.
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's
People are
kind of what I'm
anticipating
predicting here.
that.
I am seeing a movement right now, and I'm like, okay, this would be a great time to lock something in, because once these interest rates do go down, and we have an election and all these different things, and there's some uncertainty, but we still have a shortage of housing, and more buyers means prices are going to go up.
But here's the problem. You don't want to be a lemming. Okay, so this particular house was a small little tiny house that was bid up over $200,000. This was not a luxury home.
Whew.
Now, let me give you an example. Let me go backwards.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Okay, let me tell you that I've had a lot of experience in this. Back in the day when Obama offered an $8,000 credit because he was trying to stimulate people to buy housing, like in 09 or 10 or somewhere around there, where things were kind of limping along. He said anybody gets, $8,000 credit who buys a house. Well, I was short selling a number of houses in a specific area. They went up at the time. Okay, now they're double that, triple that, but I remember very clearly houses that were going on for $275,000 all day long for like a year. They're limping around at $275,000. They were now bid up to $365,000 almost overnight, because Obama offered an $8,000 tax credit. Things were bid up over $75,000.
Yeah.
Now, as soon as that tax credit was withdrawn, everything flattened out. Okay, it was just a momentary thing because we're in Silicon Valley and everything got crazy out. But there was a resting period. So the people who went crazy, I mean, they did okay in the long run if they held on to it. But it's very interesting. There's a psychology that we need to be aware of. And that's why, greedy when people are fearful when people are greedy, right? So it's something that people who are in the know watch out for, that we're not just jumping, we're doing our numbers very strategically and making sure that, but again, to your point, if the rates are high and the numbers work, it doesn't matter, because what do they say? You're buying the house and dating the rate, right? So,
yeah.
right. Because the rate can, rate will change, but whatever you buy that for. So just be aware of overbidding, especially if you're going to be flipping or investing. You can't afford to be
Absolutely. I mean, what another saying is, you make money when you buy real estate, not when you sell it. So, you get a good deal from the very beginning. That's where you make your money, especially if you can factor in the future, right? Future appreciation and everything else. There's a lot of mentorship programs and groups that are out there, a lot of them that charge thousands of dollars to be, a part of. And there's a lot of scams that are out there too, right? So what would you recommend to someone getting started that's trying to find their place, their spot, of what to watch out for and which ones to lean in on?
Okay. The first thing is just get your education. Number one, get your education. Podcasts like this, go on YouTube, start learning, go to real estate investment clubs. Those are very valuable.
I agree.
What I have noticed that in real estate investment clubs, you really do have to be careful, because sharks do go there specifically for the guppies.
Yeah.
So I've seen it over and over again, especially, and it's more often than I like to admit, it's the teachers, the ones up on stage, that end up, getting people to trust them. And then they end up scalping or hurting them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think the number one thing is really know the reputation of anybody you get involved with. Know their reputation. Talk to other people. There's that marvelous book *Sapien*, which is a
Yeah, I actually just read that not too long ago.
it was a fabulous book, right? Well, one of the
Yes.
interesting things it was talking about was when humans started evolving, the thing that protected the tribe was gossip. Because like, watch out for that person over there
Yeah.
because, right. So it actually protected the tribe. So I'm a big believer. I don't gossip about anybody, but if I know someone is a scammer and they're going to hurt my friends, you better believe that is not going to be a secret.
That's
And
right. It's going to get out.
I've helped several friends of mine avoid a disaster, and I will always tell people what's what and warn them because I've seen more scams than I'd like to admit in the 30 years, and the more people who are just not good eggs. So really knowing the reputation, I think that there's nothing wrong with talking to people. What are you doing? What are you working on? And then getting to know who are the good players, who are the players, and who's honest and who's straightforward. Name dropping, I think that Fortune Builders has got a good program, but I wouldn't say just, go blindly, because I've seen people who are part of the Fortune Builders program, just, not the main guys. They're cool. I have no issues with them. But some of them, they got involved and they didn't know what they were doing because they were early, they were doing their best. And then they made some mistakes that hurt investors' money. J. Shield Commercial Academy, if you're interested in commercial, I don't think there's anything on the planet that's better than him. I've known him since 2010. Remarkable reputation,
Yes. So if it's too easy, then it's probably is a scam, right? If it sounds too easy, it's probably a scam.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's hard to refute that logic.
Yeah.
So what I've seen over the years, I'd like it to be different sometimes, but I haven't seen it yet. So, yeah.
So
Yep.
you've also founded the Women's Wealth Network. So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, it's something we're starting in the Silicon Valley area, but I started targeting women, and I'm developing product. Like, I'm still in the middle of a book that I'm writing
Nice.
around this and a master class. Our group gets together as a real estate investment meetup once a month together, and we exchange ideas. Really high quality people, and it's women and men. But I'm currently writing my book and master class for women specifically. And the whole idea is basically what we're talking about. Know yourself, compress time, find ways, and believe it's possible, because it is, and I've seen it.
Great. And so how do people get connected into that?
You can get to meetup.com. My name is Ginger Crystal Faith. I'm primarily on Facebook, but I'm also on LinkedIn and the other social medias. I have a YouTube channel. Just reach out to me directly, and not hard to find. And then we can hook you up.
Well, I'll definitely put some links with this podcast when we push it out, so people can get a hold of you that way. I guess like my final question to you is, if you could go back through your whole real estate journey and do it all over again, where would you start?
Oh, wow. If I would do it again, I think I would have started with commercial earlier.
You would have, I hear that over and over again.
Yeah. I would have
It's
started.
like people build up and then they eventually get into it. And for me, like, honestly, because I'm not in commercial, it's like so far out there. It just looks like, oh man,
it is.
Yeah.
It is far out there until, like, I've been going to the commercial academy. Like I said, I've known Scott since 2010, but in 2010, I was knee deep into short sales and short sale flips. And I was like, there's no way I could make any, I had no bandwidth for commercial to even learn about it. So I decided, after my girlfriend and her, amazing triumph and, retire, she bought a farm and she's retiring and growing her organic vegetables and having a good time. Right. It's like, what are you doing? And I'm still slaving away here. So I started really giving it, I'm like, if she could do it.
But did she need, because this is what people are going to ask. Well, she must have had a lot of money to get started, right?
She found it.
She found it. So that's the key.
She found it. And yes, you can find
money.
it. She found it. It was not her money, but she found it. She had some.
So would you say the hardest part is finding the deal or finding the money?
The deal.
The deal. So I always say if you find the right deal, the money will come.
Yeah. But the hard part is learning what a good deal looks like in an area full of sharks.
Yes. Yes. And that group that you're in with Jay Scott, commercial real estate, what's it called again?
�ㄗ Commercial Academy.
So that's a place that you could learn how to find a good deal, right?
Yeah, you have to do it yourself, but they'll teach you what the structure is, And then, obviously there's all sorts of categories. Like you said, there's office, there's industrial,
Yes.
there's all sorts of categories. So it's really, even that is, it takes time, because the first thing he says is find 2 assets and 5 markets. Well, that to me is what, when I first started, I'm like, oh, I don't know what asset to pick. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know anything, right? So even that, you can't just snap your fingers and say, I'm going to do, an office building. I don't know the first thing about an office
Yeah.
building. So
Yeah.
even that takes time. You start talking to people who own office building. What's it like? You start reading it, okay, what are the numbers like? Oh, it used to be sold for $1 billion. Now if it's for 23 million. Oh, I still don't have 23 million. So it's a learning. And it's been 1 year. I have not purchased any commercial real estate. I did back in 2010. But I did it as in partnership with a few other people. So it wasn't like I was spearheading it. So it's been 1 year, and I'm learning. And with all my background in real estate, which is very, very
Pretty
substantial,
diverse. Yeah.
very substantial. I still find it's another world, another level, and it's been very humbling, and I'm okay with that, because it's easy when you're comfortable to kind of get a little fat and lazy. So it's pushing me.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and I'm
Stay uncomfortable.
yeah,
That's the only way to succeed at anything.
right,
If you get comfortable, you're going to get lazy.
yeah.
And
It's easy to do once you have success in real estate, to just
I
say, oh,
know.
I'm just gonna watch TV instead of
I
whatever.
know.
Yeah,
I've been there. Believe me. I
yeah.
got a little comfortable after I was able to refi my entire portfolio in like 2021, and like
Wow.
literally double my monthly cash flow overnight. I was like, oh, I'm relaxing now. But now I'm like starting a property management company. I'm doing all these other things because I know
Got
that
bored.
I
You
got
got
bored.
bored.
I got
You
bored.
got bored.
I did. And
Yeah.
I'm ready for a new adventure. So this
Yeah.
has been great. I really enjoyed our conversation. I definitely want to keep in touch with you. I'm actually going to check out that academy myself because I am very interested.
Well, do so for me, and I'll get you a discount, because I'm in the inner crowd now.
All right. I will definitely do that for
Yeah,
sure.
actually, we have something coming up in October in San Diego.
Nice. I love San Diego.
So I'll be there.
Okay.
And so if that's something you want to do, let me know, and I'll give you a link to get you I think it's 40 or 50% discount on the 3-day weekend class.
Nice. Yeah, I will. And is that something I could share with my listeners too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I think that'd be great. I know there's people out there listening right now, and they're like, "Oh, I want to go to that." So
Yeah. And then definitely meet me.
yes,
If you show up, you can
absolutely,
meet me. That'd be awesome.
absolutely. Yeah, this is great. I really do appreciate the time that you spent with me today. So to everyone else that's out there today, thank you for joining us. God bless, and until next time, peace out.